The holographic Earth spun lazily beneath Envoy Zalrock's fingers, a perfect blue marble suspended in the void of the Thraxian's bridge. His thin lips curled into a smile as he gestured to the small metallic canister held by his assistant. "This, my esteemed colleagues, is how we solve the human problem," he announced, voice dripping with smug satisfaction. "A nano-spike swarm, crude by our standards but perfectly calibrated for their primitive defenses." The gathered officers of the Arculan hegemony watched with interest as Zalrock tapped a command into his wrist console. The canister in the simulation split open, releasing a cloud of microscopic metallic particles that glittered like malevolent stars as they descended toward the holographic Earth. "Observe," he said. The swarm penetrated the simulated defenses with uncanny precision, cutting through digital representations of satellites, orbital platforms, and atmospheric shields. In the simulation, coastal cities went dark in cascading waves of destruction. "A mere fraction of our capabilities," Zalrock continued, "but sufficient to demonstrate our technological superiority. The humans will learn their place." 6 solar cycles later, the actual deployment of the nanospike swarm against Earth produced results that differed dramatically from the simulation. The weapon grazed the human coastal city of New Mumbai, causing panic and structural damage but far fewer casualties than anticipated. Standing before the Arculan High Command, Zalrock struggled to explain the discrepancy. "A calibration error," he insisted. "The next deployment will be more definitive." From her office in the Terran Learning Collective headquarters, Dr. Elena Morris watched footage of the attack. Her dark eyes narrowed in concentration. The wall of screens before her displayed damage assessments, casualty reports, and preliminary analyses of the alien weapon. "Is intimidation a form of communication?" she murmured to herself. "Or a confession of weakness?" "Both," came a gruff voice from the doorway. Captain Marcus Lee stood with arms crossed, his weathered face bearing the scars of Earth's last resource war. "They're showing us what they can do while hiding what they can't." Elena nodded slowly, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface as she isolated fragments of the nanospikes retrieved from New Mumbai. "They're advanced, but not as advanced as they want us to believe." She magnified the image, revealing microstructures that seemed almost familiar. "There's a pattern here we can exploit." The discovery was not coincidental. In the decades since Earth had emerged from its devastating resource wars, the planet had undergone a remarkable transformation. The formation of the Terran Coalition had united formerly warring nations under a single banner. But perhaps more significantly, the establishment of the Terran Learning Collective had created a global network of scientists, philosophers, and engineers dedicated to advancing human knowledge and capabilities. Elena Morris had been among the collective's founding members, a brilliant physicist whose theories on quantum entanglement and gravitational manipulation had revolutionized humanity's understanding of fundamental forces. Now, as lead physicist of Project Aegis, she found herself in the uncomfortable position of applying those theories to defensive and potentially offensive technologies. The Arculan hegemony has dominated this sector for millennia, Marcus reminded her, stepping closer to examine the holographic projections. "They view the confed of stars as barely tolerable merchants, and us as upstart primates who should be grateful for scraps." Elena sighed, pushing a strand of dark hair from her face. "I know the political situation, Marcus. I'm more concerned with the practical problem of stopping those nanospikes if they launch a full-scale attack." As security chief for Project Aegis, Marcus Lee had been assigned to Elena's team not for his scientific acumen but for his strategic mind and combat experience. A former Marine who had fought in the worst of Earth's resource wars, he valued loyalty over protocol and effectiveness over formality, qualities that had initially put him at odds with the methodical physicist but had gradually earned her respect. "The Collective Council is meeting in an hour," he said. "They'll want your assessment." Elena nodded, but her attention had already returned to the fragmented nanospikes. There was something about their construction, their resonance frequency. Tell them I'll have preliminary countermeasures by morning. What she didn't say, what she couldn't bring herself to say aloud, was that the attack on New Mumbai had awoken memories she'd fought to suppress. Her sister, Helena, had been aboard a humanitarian vessel caught in an Arculan blockade 9 years ago. Official reports called it a tragic misunderstanding, but Helena had never accepted that explanation. Now, staring at the weapon that had struck Earth, she felt the old grief transforming into something sharper, more focused. Aboard the Thraxion, Envoy Zal Rock paced the length of his private chamber, his frustration evident in every rigid movement. The nano-spike swarm had been meant as a demonstration of overwhelming force, a clear message that resistance would be futile. Instead, it had merely grazed its target, making the mighty Arculan hegemony appear ineffectual. The calibration was perfect, he insisted to his adjutant, a younger Arculan named Vex Tor. It was their defenses. They must have deployed countermeasures we didn't detect. Impossible, Vex Tor replied, his tone carefully neutral. Our intelligence indicates the humans possess nothing capable of disrupting our technology. Zal Rock stopped pacing, his silver eyes narrowing. Then explain what happened. Perhaps we underestimated them. The suggestion earned a dismissive wave. Nonsense. They're barely a century beyond combustion engines. Their understanding of quantum physics is rudimentary at best. Zal Rock turned to the view screen, where Earth hung distant but visible. No, there's another explanation. Prepare a second swarm. This time, we'll target one of their unmanned orbital platforms. A precise demonstration with no possibility of interference. Vex Tor hesitated. The High Command has not authorized further deployment. I don't need authorization for a calibration test, Zal Rock snapped. The platform is uninhabited. There will be no casualties, just a clear message. What Zal Rock refused to acknowledge, even to himself, was the fundamental flaw in his worldview. Like many in the Arculan hegemony, he believed technological superiority alone guaranteed dominance in the galactic order. Political nuances, cultural adaptability, moral considerations, these were irrelevant distractions. Technology determined destiny, and the Arculans had the most advanced technology in known space. Or so they had believed for millennia. 3 days later, the Thraxion launched its second nanospike swarm, targeting a Terran orbital research platform designated Prometheus 7. The unmanned station housed atmospheric monitoring equipment and experimental agricultural modules, valuable but not critical to Earth's defense. Elena Morris, having barely slept since the attack on New Mumbai, watched from the collective's command center as the alien weapon approached its target. "Resonance net activated," she announced, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. Adjusting frequency to match the approaching swarm. Around her, technicians and fellow scientists monitored a complex array of instruments. In the center of the room, a holographic projection showed the nanospike swarm as a dense cloud of red particles moving inexorably toward the blue representation of Prometheus 7. "Net at full power," called one of the technicians. "Interference pattern established." Elena held her breath as the swarm encountered the invisible field generated by her hastily constructed defense system. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, like dust in a strong wind, the nanospikes began to scatter, their carefully programmed formation disintegrating into harmless dispersal. "It's working," Marcus said quietly, standing at her shoulder. "How did you figure it out so quickly?" Elena's eyes remained fixed on the holographic display. "Their technology isn't as alien as it appears. The nanospikes operate on principles similar to our own quantum entanglement theories. They're just more refined." She allowed herself a small smile. "But refinement creates specificity, and specificity creates vulnerability. The resonance net wasn't destroying the nanospikes. It was simply disrupting the quantum field that kept them coordinated. Without that coordination, the swarm became just a cloud of inert metal particles, dangerous only through direct impact rather than their intended synchronized penetration of targeted systems. Aboard the Thraxian, Zalrock watched in disbelief as his weapon scattered harmlessly around the human orbital platform. "Impossible," he whispered, then louder. "Impossible. They cannot have developed countermeasures this quickly." He rounded on his technical staff, eyes blazing with fury and humiliation. "Explain this." None could offer a satisfactory explanation. The humans had somehow analyzed the nanospike technology and developed an effective defense in mere days, a feat that should have taken years, if not decades, given their presumed technological level. "Send a communication to their leadership," Zalrock ordered, his voice cold with rage. "Demand an explanation for this interference with our calibration test. Inform them that any further obstruction will be considered an act of aggression against the Arculan hegemony, requiring full-scale retaliation." The message reached the Terran Coalition Council within hours, its threatening tone causing immediate concern among Earth's leaders. Elena Morris, summoned to provide her assessment, stood before the assembled representatives of humanity with a clarity of purpose she hadn't felt in years. "The Arculan envoy believes we've stolen their technology," she explained. "He cannot conceive that we might have developed our own countermeasures through independent research. This blindness gives us an advantage. An advantage we desperately need," added Marcus Lee, standing beside her. "Our intelligence suggests the Thraxian carries weapons far more destructive than the nanospike swarm if they launch a full attack, which is why we must respond diplomatically," interrupted Councillor Samira Rahman, representative of the South Asian Federation. "New Mumbai is still counting its dead. We cannot risk further attacks." "With respect, Councillor," Elena replied, "I believe appeasement would be interpreted as weakness. The Arculan hegemony respects strength above all else." The debate continued for hours, with some council members advocating for immediate diplomatic concessions, while others pushed for accelerated military preparations. In the end, a middle path was chosen. Earth would send a measured response, neither apologetic nor overtly hostile, while simultaneously authorizing Elena to complete her classified project, a defensive system codenamed Helena's Spear. As the council session ended, Marcus found Elena staring out a viewport at the night sky, her expression troubled. "You got what you wanted," he said. "Full authorization to complete the prototype." "Is it what I wanted?" she asked quietly. "To turn my research into a weapon?" Marcus stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Helena's Spear isn't just a weapon. It's a shield, a deterrent. That's what they all say, isn't it? Every weapon is defensive until it's used." She turned to face him, her eyes reflecting the distant stars. "My sister was trying to help people when she died. She believed in healing, not hurting. And naming this project after her?" Elena's jaw tightened. "To remind myself of the cost of failure. If we can't defend ourselves, truly defend ourselves, more people will die." The following weeks saw feverish activity within the secure facilities of Project Aegis. Elena Morris drove herself and her team relentlessly, refining the theoretical models that would allow Helena's Spear to function as intended. The technology was revolutionary, controlled micro-black hole bursts that could be precisely targeted to disrupt matter at the subatomic level. In essence, Helena's Spear was a gravity weapon, capable of generating intense localized gravitational fields that could tear apart virtually any material. Unlike conventional weapons, it left no radiation, no chemical residue, just the clean destruction of targeted matter. "The beauty of it," Elena explained to Marcus during a rare break, "is its precision. We can calibrate it to affect only specific molecular structures, leaving everything else intact." Marcus nodded, though the physics was beyond his understanding. so we could disable an alien ship without harming nearby satellites or stations. Theoretically, we haven't tested it at full scale yet. She rubbed her tired eyes. And I'm not entirely sure what will happen when we do. This was the moral tension that kept Elena awake at night. Helena's spear represented power beyond anything humanity had wielded before. Power that could defend Earth or, in the wrong hands, devastate entire worlds. She found herself constantly balancing her desire for security against her fear of creating something monstrous. Meanwhile, diplomatic communications with the Thraxi had deteriorated. Zal Rock, insulted by Earth's refusal to apologize for interfering with his calibration test, had moved his vessel to Earth's L2 Lagrange point, a strategic position that allowed him to monitor the planet while remaining relatively secure from conventional attacks. From this vantage, he issued increasingly strident demands, insisting that humanity acknowledge Arculan authority in the sector and submit to technological restrictions that would effectively end Earth's independent research programs. "He's trying to provoke us," Marcus told the Council during an emergency session. "Intel suggests he's preparing for a more substantial attack, possibly targeting multiple population centers. Can your resonance net protect us from that?" asked Councillor Rahman, directing her question to Elena. "Not at that scale," Elena admitted. "The current system was designed for localized defense against relatively small swarms. A full-scale attack would overwhelm it." "Then what options do we have?" Elena hesitated, aware that her next words would cross a threshold from which there would be no return. "Helena's spear is nearly operational. One more week of calibration, and—" "We don't have a week," Marcus interrupted, displaying a tactical hologram showing the Thraxians' position. "Energy readings from their vessel indicate they're preparing for major weapons deployment within the next 48 hours. Silence fell over the council chamber as the implications sank in. Finally, Councillor Rahman spoke, her voice solemn. "Dr. Morris, you have authorization to deploy Helena's spear as soon as it's viable. Captain Lee, coordinate with Global Defense Forces to prepare evacuation protocols for potential target areas." As they left the chamber, Elena felt a weight settling onto her shoulders, the burden of wielding a power she had created but never truly wanted to use. "You're doing the right thing," Marcus said quietly, as if reading her thoughts. "Sometimes the only way to prevent violence is to demonstrate that you can respond in kind." "That doesn't make it easier," she replied. "Helena would have hated this, everything about it. Would she have preferred we remain defenseless?" Elena had no answer. The final preparations for Helena's spear took place in a secure facility beneath the Antarctic ice sheet, far from civilian populations and protected by layers of defensive systems. Elena worked without rest, making minute adjustments to the quantum stabilizers that would contain and direct the micro-black hole bursts. 26 hours before the Thraxians' weapons were expected to deploy, she authorized the first full-power test, standing in the reinforced control room, surrounded by the world's foremost physicists and engineers. She felt a strange calm descend over her. "Initiating primary sequence," she announced. "Quantum field stabilizers at maximum." The massive array of equipment hummed with power as energy levels climbed toward the threshold needed to create a microscopic singularity. On monitoring screens, a test target, a block of ultra-dense material similar to the hull composition of the Thraxian, waited in an isolated chamber. "Gravitational focus aligned," reported one of the technicians. "Target locked." Elena took a deep breath. Fire. For a heartbeat. Nothing seemed to happen. Then, with startling suddenness, the test material simply ceased to exist. There was no explosion, no dramatic disintegration, just a perfectly cylindrical hole where solid matter had been moments before. "Target neutralized," the technician confirmed. "Collateral effect within acceptable parameters." The control room erupted in cheers and relieved laughter, but Elena remained focused, studying the readings with intense concentration. The weapon had worked exactly as designed, creating a momentary gravitational distortion that effectively removed the targeted matter from normal space-time. "Prepare for deployment," she ordered, silencing the celebration. "We move to the orbital platform in 6 hours." As the team scrambled to prepare Helena's spear for transport to the space-based firing platform, Elena retreated to her office, needing a moment alone with her thoughts. She found Marcus waiting for her, his expression grave. "The Thraxian has launched probes toward Earth's atmosphere," he informed her without preamble. "Intelligence believes they're targeting defense installations in preparation for a major strike." Elena nodded, unsurprised. "How long?" 18 hours, maybe less." He studied her face. "Are you ready for this?" "Does it matter? We're out of options." She moved to the window, looking out at the stark Antarctic landscape. "I keep thinking about what happens after. If this works, if we actually stop them, what kind of world are we creating? One where the ultimate weapon always looms in the background?" Marcus joined her at the window. "The alternative is submission, allowing the Arculan hegemony to dictate humanity's future." "I know." She turned to face him, her decision made. "Let's go." The deployment of Helena's spear to its orbital firing platform proceeded with military precision, as Earth's defensive forces prepared for the anticipated Arculan attack. Elena and a skeleton crew made final adjustments to the weapon system that represented humanity's best hope for survival. From the command center of the orbital platform, Elena had a clear view of the Thraxian hovering at the L2 point, its sleek form occasionally catching the distant sunlight. Sensors indicated increasing energy signatures from the alien vessel, preparations for what would undoubtedly be a devastating attack. "All systems green," reported the weapons technician. "Helena's spear is fully operational." Elena nodded, her focus absolute. "Lock targeting systems on the Thraxian's primary weapons array. Minimum effective yield." She had insisted on this last point, despite objections from some military advisors. Helena's spear was capable of completely destroying the alien vessel, but Elena was determined to use only enough force to neutralize the threat, not to annihilate their adversary. "Target locked," the technician confirmed. "Awaiting final authorization." Elena hesitated, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. This was the culmination of years of research, driven initially by scientific curiosity and then by the need to protect her world. But in this final moment, she found herself thinking not of equations or defensive strategies, but of her sister's face, Helena, who had believed so deeply in humanity's better nature. "Dr. Morris," Marcus said quietly. "It's time." She nodded, squaring her shoulders. "Initiate firing sequence." The platform hummed with energy as Helena's spear powered up, drawing on massive reserves to create the controlled singularity that would disable the Thraxian. On the main view screen, a targeting reticle centered on the alien vessel's weapons section, the most vulnerable and dangerous part of the ship. "Firing in 3, 2, 1. There was no visible beam. No dramatic light show, just a momentary distortion in the space between the platform and the Thraxian. Then, with shocking suddenness, a section of the alien vessel simply vanished, leaving a perfect semicircular hole in its hull. Alarms blared on the Thraxian as emergency systems engaged, attempting to seal the breach and stabilize the damaged sections. Secondary explosions rippled through the ship as power conduits failed and containment fields collapsed. "Direct hit," the weapons officer reported, voice steady but tinged with awe. "Target's weapon systems are offline. Their power grid is failing." Elena watched the display with a mixture of satisfaction and horror. The weapon had worked perfectly, better than she had dared hope. The Thraxian was effectively neutralized, its ability to threaten Earth eliminated with surgical precision. "We're receiving a transmission from the Thraxian," announced the communications officer. "Audio only." "Put it through," Elena ordered. Zal Rock's voice filled the command center, no longer confident and condescending, but strained and desperate. What have you done? How is this possible? Your technological level cannot— This is Dr. Elena Morris of the Terran Learning Collective, she interrupted. Your vessel has been partially disabled by a targeted gravitational weapon. Your weapon systems are no longer functional, but life support remains intact. There was a moment of stunned silence before Zalrock responded. You could have destroyed us completely. Yes, Elena agreed simply. We chose not to. Another pause, longer this time. Why? It was a sincere question, one that revealed the fundamental disconnect between Arculen and human thinking. In Zalrock's world, showing mercy to a defeated enemy was incomprehensible. Because we are not monsters, Elena replied, her voice trembling slightly. We don't seek domination, Envoy Zalrock. We seek coexistence. The weapon we just demonstrated was developed for defense, not conquest. She nodded to the weapons officer, who powered down Helena's spear. We're standing down our weapon system now, as a gesture of good faith. Your vessel will be permitted to withdraw to a safe distance for repairs. You expect me to believe this was merely a defensive action? Zalrock demanded, though his tone had lost much of its previous arrogance. I expect you to report accurately to your superiors what happened here today, Elena replied. That humanity possesses technology you didn't anticipate, and that we used it with restraint. The choice of what happens next belongs to the Arculen hegemony as much as it does to us. There was a long silence before Zalrock spoke again, his voice subdued. We will withdraw to effect repairs. This incident will be reported to the High Command. The communication ended, and for a moment the command center remained silent, the enormity of what had transpired sinking in. Then, gradually, cheers and applause erupted as the tension of the past weeks found release. Elena accepted the congratulations of her team with quiet dignity, but her mind was already racing ahead. Considering the implications of this confrontation, they had won a respite, perhaps even established a foundation for future negotiations, but they had also revealed capabilities that would forever change humanity's place in the galactic order. 3 months later, Elena Morris stood on the rebuilt shoreline of New Mumbai, watching fishing boats return with the evening tide. Beside her, Marcus Lee leaned against the sea wall, his gaze following hers out to the horizon. The rebuilding is going well, he observed. You'd hardly know there was an attack. Elena nodded, though they both knew the physical reconstruction was only part of the recovery. The psychological impact of being the first Earth city targeted by alien weapons would linger far longer. The Arculen diplomatic delegation arrives tomorrow, she said. First official contact since the Thraxian incident. Negotiation instead of intimidation, Marcus remarked. Progress, of a sort. Elena turned to face him. But we still have Helena's spear, and they know we have it. The weapon had been secured in a deep space facility, accessible only through multiple authentication protocols. Elena herself held one of the critical access codes, a responsibility she had accepted reluctantly, but with characteristic determination to ensure the technology would never be misused. That's the reality of our new position, Marcus said. The Arculen hegemony respects us now because they fear what we might do if provoked again. Is that peace, though? Living under the shadow of mutually assured destruction? Marcus considered this. Maybe peace isn't the absence of weapons, but the wisdom to know when not to use them. You demonstrated that wisdom with the Thraxian. Elena wasn't entirely convinced, but she appreciated his perspective. In the months since the confrontation, she had written extensively about the experience, trying to make sense of humanity's new role in the galactic community. Her most recent essay, published throughout the Terran Coalition and even translated for distribution to the Confed of Stars, had argued that power is not measured by what you can destroy, but by what you choose to protect. The essay had been controversial, particularly among those who believed Earth should leverage its new technology for territorial expansion or resource acquisition. But it had also resonated with many who saw in humanity's restraint a path to a different kind of interstellar presence, one based on cooperation and mutual respect rather than domination. "What happens when the next crisis comes?" she asked, voicing the concern that had haunted her since the Thraxians' retreat. "When someone develops an even more powerful weapon, in a universe of ever-escalating arms, can true peace exist when the ultimate weapon always looms?" Marcus didn't have an answer, and Elena hadn't expected one. It was the question that would define the coming decades, perhaps centuries, of human expansion into the cosmos. The revelation of Helena's spear had irrevocably changed humanity's position in the galactic order, elevating Earth from a minor frontier world to a power that even the ancient Arculan hegemony treated with caution. As the sun set over the Arabian Sea, casting long shadows across the reconstructed cityscape of New Mumbai, Helena found herself thinking once more of her sister. Helena had died believing in humanity's capacity for compassion and wisdom, even in the face of existential threats, in creating the weapon that bore her name. Helena had hoped to honor that belief, not by destroying their enemies, but by creating the conditions for a peace based on mutual respect rather than fear. Whether she had succeeded remained to be seen. The Arculan delegation would arrive with their own agenda, their own perspective on the confrontation at L2. The delicate dance of diplomacy would begin, with the specter of superweapons hanging unspoken in the background of every negotiation. "We should head back," Marcus said, breaking the contemplative silence. "Early start tomorrow." Elena nodded, taking one last look at the peaceful scene before her. Whatever the future held, humanity had demonstrated that it would not be intimidated or subjugated. They had answered a cheap weapon with a superweapon, but more importantly, they had shown restraint in its use, a distinction that might prove more significant in the long run than the technology itself. As they walked back toward the city center, Elena thought about the question that had occurred to her when she first reviewed footage of the attack on New Mumbai. Is intimidation a form of communication or a confession of weakness? Perhaps, she reflected. The answer depended not on the intimidation itself, but on how one chose to respond to it. In that response lay the true measure of strength, not in the weapons one possessed, but in the wisdom with which they were wielded. The lights of New Mumbai glittered around them, a testament to human resilience and ingenuity. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new negotiations, new opportunities to shape humanity's place among the stars. For now, though, Earth was secure, its people free to determine their own destiny. And that, Elena decided, was victory enough.